What if your prison has no walls, no bars, no locked door, no guard outside the cell? What if the cage is made of fear, desire, shame, addiction, distraction? What if the most dangerous rulers are not sitting on thrones, but sitting inside your mind? The Gnostics called them Archons, rulers, powers, authorities, not childish demons, something colder, architects of perception, wardens of the soul, engineers of forgetfulness. In the darkest reading of Gnostic thought, humanity is not simply confused, humanity is managed. Tonight, we enter a disturbing idea in mystical history: the Archons, invisible rulers behind the veil, feeding on ignorance, and perhaps on something darker, something called Loosh. In Gnostic myth, the Archons were powers of the lower realms, the machinery of fate, limitation, and matter. To the Gnostics, this world was not the highest reality. It was a copy, a distortion, a flawed construction made by a lower creator called the Demiurge, or Yaldabaoth, a blind craftsman born from error. And in that ignorance, he creates a world. This world, a world of beauty, but also hunger, decay, fear, time, disease, and loss. And behind this world, woven through it, the Archons operate. They do not need to destroy the divine spark inside you. They only need to make you forget it exists. That is their horror. They do not always attack. They distract. They bury the soul under noise, identity, fear, and routine. And beneath the routine, something whispers, "This is not all there is." But the world is loud, and the whisper gets buried. In Gnostic thought, the human being contains something not native to this world: a spark, a seed, a fragment of light. The Archons can imitate, manipulate, and trap, but they cannot generate true divine light. So they build a maze around it: sensation, fear, false identity. A maze so convincing the prisoner defends the prison. That is the perfect system. Not chains around the wrists, chains around perception. The Archons do not need you to believe in them. They only need you asleep, reactive, hungry, afraid, mistaking the mask for the self, the wound for the identity, the noise for the truth. This is why Gnosticism is dangerous. It says humanity is asleep. It says reality may be a control system, and salvation is awakening. Gnosis, direct knowing. The moment the illusion cracks and something in you remembers, I am not the mask, I am not the fear, I am not the program, I am not from here. But if the Archons feed on ignorance, what else do they feed on? This is where the myth turns darker. In modern esoteric circles, one word appears beside the Archons: Loosh. Robert Monroe, the out-of-body explorer and founder of the Monroe Institute, used the term in his accounts of non-physical experience. In the Loosh idea, human life produces emotional energy, generated by struggle, longing, pain, love, fear, and the brutal drama of being alive. Many reduce it to one disturbing sentence: human emotion is being harvested. In the darkest version, Earth is not only a school, it is a farm. Not a farm of bodies, a farm of experience. A place where suffering, attachment, panic, grief, conflict, and desire create something unseen forces can cultivate and consume. The Archon myth and Loosh idea are not the same system, but they point toward the same nightmare. What if humanity is not only trapped by illusion, but exploited by it? What if outrage, fear, despair, addiction, and division are fuel? And what if the modern world is designed to keep that fuel flowing? Every screen screaming for attention, every headline spiking the nervous system. This is the Loosh farm interpretation. Dark, brutal, almost too ugly to look at. And yet, even as metaphor, it cuts deep. Human attention is harvested. Outrage is monetized. This system does not need to be supernatural to be parasitic. That is the uncomfortable part. The Archons may be literal beings, psychological forces, social systems, algorithms, or trauma patterns. But in every version, the method is the same. Keep the soul externalized, hungry, afraid, and too exhausted to remember itself. The Archons rule through identification. They make you say, "This anger is me. This craving is me. This wound is me. This body is me. This story is me." Once you believe the mask is the self, the deeper self disappears. Not destroyed, hidden, buried alive beneath the personality. The divine spark does not scream. It waits. Gnosis is direct recognition, not facts, not opinions. A knowing so deep it changes your relationship to reality. Not learning something new, remembering something ancient. The Archons can tolerate religion, politics, even spirituality, as long as it stays external. Another identity, another distraction. What they cannot tolerate is direct awakening. A human being who sees the hook and does not bite. No, not this time. That is rebellion. Not shouting, not performing, not proving, refusing to be harvested. The Archonic system runs on reaction, trigger and feed, fear and submission, desire and consumption. The moment you create space between stimulus and response, something breaks. A gap opens, a crack in the machinery, and through that crack, light enters. This is why silence is dangerous. A distracted person is easy to rule. A still person becomes difficult. The Archons hate the pause, because the pause is where the soul remembers it has a choice. The prison is not only cosmic. It lives in the nervous system, in habits, compulsions, and daily betrayals of the self. Every time you trade clarity for comfort, or feed the same old fear, the Archons gain territory. Not outside you, inside you. Even if you do not believe in literal Archons, you can observe Archonic forces. Anything that makes you less conscious, feeds on your attention, turns pain into a loop, fear into obedience, or identity into a cage. That is Archonic. The myth gives a name to a pattern, and once a pattern has a name, it becomes harder for it to hide. But there is a trap here. Not every problem is an Archon. Not every difficult emotion is an attack. A person can become so obsessed with invisible rulers that they stop taking responsibility for visible choices. That is another prison, because paranoia can become its own Archon. The cage does not care what you call it, as long as you stay inside. So the point is not to fear the Archons. The point is to stop feeding what they rule through: fear, compulsion, hatred, blind desire, false identity, mechanical reaction. The Gnostic path is not panic. It is awakening. Not obsession with darkness, remembrance of light. But this light is not soft. It burns through illusion. It exposes every place where you have been trained, weakened, distracted, and divided from yourself. It does not comfort the mask. It destroys it. And perhaps that is why most people avoid it. Awakening is not always peaceful. Sometimes it feels like betrayal. You realize how much of your life was spent feeding things that never loved you. Systems, desires, fears speaking with your voice. Once you see it, you cannot fully unsee it. That is the beginning of Gnosis. Seeing the machinery clearly, refusing to become machinery yourself. In Gnostic myth, the Archons guard the gates between the soul and the higher realms. Every awakening has gatekeepers: fear, shame, pleasure, power, identity, even spiritual pride. At each gate, something asks, "Are you this?" The soul must answer, "No, I pass through." The Archons rule by making the lower world feel final. They say, "This is all there is. This is who you are. Do not look beyond the frame. Do not remember the light. And the tired soul believes them. Until something breaks. A dream, a loss, a strange encounter, a silence so deep the world feels artificial, a sudden knowing. I have been asleep. That moment is dangerous. The system can survive almost anything except remembrance. Once you remember, even briefly, that you are awareness itself, the machinery loses authority. The hook still appears, but you see the hook. Fear still rises, but you see the fear. Desire still speaks, but you hear the voice behind the voice. This is how the archonic grip weakens. Not all at once, not through fantasy, through repeated acts of inner sovereignty. You take back attention. You take back reaction. You take back silence. You take back choice. And every time you do, the prison becomes less solid. So what are the Archons? Literal powers? Psychological forces? Social systems? Algorithms? Gatekeepers? In the Monroe-inspired Loosh reading, Consumers of Emotional Intensity, different maps, same warning. Something feeds when consciousness is unconscious. Something rules when the soul forgets itself. The question is not only whether Archons exist. The question is, what in your life behaves like one? What drains attention? What feeds fear? What turns pain into repetition? What keeps you asleep? Because that is where the battle is, not in some distant cosmic realm. Here, in the next thought, impulse, reaction. Maybe the most terrifying possibility is this. The Archons do not need to hide anymore. Their work is everywhere. In the noise, feeds, addictions, outrage, identity, desire, loneliness. Maybe the ancient rulers simply changed masks. Maybe the prison upgraded. Maybe the bars became invisible. But the divine spark remains, buried, quiet, watching, waiting. And when the seeker turns inward, when the noise drops, when fear is seen instead of obeyed, the spark begins to burn. Not as comfort, as fire. And fire does not negotiate with darkness. It reveals what is hidden. It consumes what is false. It lights the path out. The Archons rule through ignorance. So the first act of rebellion is to see. The second is to stop feeding them. And the third is to remember what they tried to make you forget. You are not merely a body inside a system, not a name, role, wound, consumer, reaction. You are the witness behind the mask, the light behind the thought, the spark behind the prison. That is why the Archons fear awakening. Because once the prisoner remembers he is not the prison, the walls begin to crack. Have you ever felt the machinery? A pattern that fed on your attention? A moment where the world suddenly felt like a veil? Share it in the comments. And subscribe to Mystic Pathways, because the visible world is only the surface. And some rulers only lose power when they are finally seen.